Welcome to the Inside Carolina podcast. I'm your host, Tommy Ashley. This is On the Beat podcast, recording this on Monday evening. If you happen to be watching live on YouTube, a little special treat. You're going to get some fan interaction while we're going on this. Gregory Hall's joining me. He's in charge of the questions from the masses. Of course, Greg Barnes as well, Luke Buxton, and we are sponsored by Johnny T-Shirt and JohnnyT-Shirt.com. Before we get started, take a moment to rate us and review us on Apple Podcasts and subscribe on YouTube and however you get your podcasts as well. Greg Barnes, Carolina had a bye week, for lack of a better way of putting it, this weekend. What did we learn about the ACC while Carolina was enjoying their weekend off?
I don't know that we learned anything good, right? I mean, good for North Carolina. The fact that North Carolina was able to go on the run that they did after that 0-2 start. I mean, they're a game and a half back of Virginia in the standings now. And I kind of had thought that Virginia and FSU and Louisville were really the cream of the crop. And I've continued to give those teams opportunities to kind of prove that. And they really just haven't. And so I do think they are top tier teams. Are they teams that I would say, well, sure, they're the Final Four teams out of the ACC squads? Nah, I don't know that I would say that at all. And so props to Carolina. They've done what they needed to do. They did what they needed to do in the month of January, and they're right back square in this mix. They've got a tough stretch coming up, so they have to capitalize. But as we've talked about before, they're playing better, they're getting wins, and they're doing what Roy Williams teams do this time of year.
Luke, and looking at the ACC, like Greg mentioned, it's wide open. I mean, Virginia, you think is the class, but then they lose with, they just don't even show up for 20 minutes against their in-state rival. The Hokies are decent. They're, very good at home. Florida State, I'm starting to wonder about what's going on with Florida State, even though I think they're probably at least my favorite to win the league. And then you've got Carolina and Louisville right there in the mix for that 4 seed, the all-important 4 seed. What'd you learn this weekend?
Yeah, I think it's fun and it's not fun because it's the most fun when the ACC is at its best and you're getting those 78 teams in the NCAA tournament who all have at least a shot of making the Elite Eight Final Four. But what it is fun about this year is you have Florida State, Georgia Tech playing pretty well at times, Louisville, Duke's in the mix. Obviously, Virginia is kind of the team to take the top spot. Florida State, it's anyone's kind of game to get that first spot. It's anyone's game to kind of advance in the rankings. Look at UNC. You would think UNC was dead in the water after starting ACC play. And now they're in fourth. They've put together a 3-game win streak. Clemson and Duke are tough games, but they're very doable games. So it's anyone's league at this point. I think it's really hard to tell. I think like Virginia's definitely put themselves, kind of near the top with obviously a bad game versus Virginia Tech. But I think it's at least exciting, even if the teams aren't great. It's at least exciting. It's not just UNC, Duke, Virginia at the top of the list. And it hasn't been exactly that in years past, but it's more fun when you have 6-7 teams that, kind of have a shot to be in the first 3.
Yeah, and I think the lack of star power is the reason behind some of these issues. I mean, filling out the preseason All-ACC team was difficult, and I've discussed that. I think Sam Hauser got a lot of votes because people had heard good things about him, and he had a good tenure, I guess at Marquette. And then Garrison Brooks because of what he did last year, and beyond that, it was difficult. And Tommy, I don't want to put you on the spot because this is tough for anybody. But Ken Pom kind of keeps rankings of his top 5 of each conference. Do you have some guesses to who you think's in Ken Pom's top 5 in the ACC right now?
See, I hate when you bring up stats like that because I do not know. You got to have Virginia and Florida State.
Okay. So you don't have Florida State. You have Jay Huff from Virginia. He's the number 1 ranked player in the ACC right now.
I don't think Tommy understood your question.
I'm sorry. I'm talking about players.
Oh, my bad.
He's top 5 players, Tommy.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Good gracious.
So Jay Huff's number 1.
Huff from Virginia's number 1. Is Scotty Barnes in there?
Nope.
Moses Wright for Georgia Tech?
Nope.
Yeah.
Guesses.
You got me Champagne.
Jalen
Nope.
Johnson.
Champagne's not in there.
What?
Jalen Johnson's not in there.
Armando?
Nope.
All right.
You got
this is Stump the Geeks.
I know. I mean, it's Stump everybody.
He made us look awful.
I know, really, man. We're live, too. You going to do that while we're live?
Like I said, I wouldn't have done any better, to be honest with you. Matthew Hurt's on the list. He's played well.
He's number 5.
Sam Hauser, who's been pretty good. Ken Palm loves him some Virginia. He loves Wisconsin, too. I think it's just
they play efficient basketball.
Yeah. Carlik Jones, Louisville. He's had a good year as a transfer, for sure. And then Keve, I believe, is how you pronounce his name.
Keve Aluma.
Yeah, Aluma at Virginia Tech, who's another transfer who's had a good run this year.
I believe Champagnie and Carlik Jones were the only ACC players left on whatever stage they are of the Wooden Award.
Yeah.
I mean, Champagnie, obviously, just for his numbers, he's not on this KenPom list just because of efficiency. That's KenPom goes based on I don't know. KenPom puts so many factors in there. That's probably why he's not on the list. He's just because he's a high volume guy because Pitt needs him to be. Louisville doesn't need that for Carlik Jones, but I mean, yeah, the ACC doesn't have that star power, like you said, Greg.
And I think that's the fact that 3 of those 5 are transfers in this year. I think speaks volumes.
Yeah, that's what I'm not used to is all the transfers in. You got names you've never heard of, obviously. Greg, or Gregory, whoever's got to listen for him, where's Armando Baycott on there?
They just do top 5, but hang on one second. I can tell you.
Because, I mean, it doesn't get much more efficient than him, right? 66% from the field.
Yeah, he's 95th nationally in offensive rating, which clearly is the best on UNC's team.
Where is he here? Yeah, wow. And
when was the last time Carolina's number 1 rated efficiency offense guy was 95th?
Let's look at last year.
Well, I mean, I'm kind of grouping last year and this year together.
Oh, okay. Well, I mean, it's just for example, last year their top guy was Brandon Robinson, and can you guess what his rank was?
Come on, man.
Brandon Robinson was
281st was last year. Was their best offensive player.
D-Rob was the most efficient.
Yeah, last year, and then the year before that, with Kobe White on the team, Cam Johnson was 15th in the country, and he was number 1. Garrison was 2nd.
Interesting.
It's crazy how it works.
I was looking through Steve's game report for Clemson, and one interesting thing stood out. In Carolina's 11 losses, top 2 scorers, Armando Baycott and Caleb Love. And their 11 wins, Armando Baycott, Caleb Love. And their 5 losses, top 2 scorers, Garrison Brooks and RJ Davis. Take that as you may, but I thought that was a really interesting.
So the Brooks data there is very interesting because that extends back to last year as well.
So when Brooks played well, Carolina did not.
Or maybe when the team played bad, it was when he played his best.
Right. It's like and you kind of saw that last year, like when he dropped his 30-point game and had his crazy games, is like when the team needed someone when no one was scoring and the team needed somebody, Garrison stepped up to the plate, but that doesn't necessarily mean that he was putting UNC over the top, as we saw last year. And so that's kind of evident by this year too.
Hey, I mean, Greg, while we're talking, look up last time Carolina averaged 75 points a game or whatever it is on the season. I mean, let's group last year and this year together.
Right, because the answer is last year.
Yeah. I mean, man, you're killing me, man. The man controls the live strings, and now he's getting very cocky.
Yeah, I think it's really just a matter of the efficiency in terms of taking care of the ball. That's what's so crazy about some of UNC's stats is, I mean, they've dominated the boards like they always do, and they've gotten better with getting the ball down low. But you just have so many wasted possessions. I mean, let's see. Right now, they've gotten better. But, I mean, they're turning the ball over 1 out of every 5 possessions.
So 20% turnover rate.
Yeah, which is 245th in the country. So not good.
Especially coming into a game with Clemson tomorrow. Clemson, I was writing the preview today, as I always do the day before, and just kind of looking at Clemson. I said this about Pitt, too, about them being an anomaly. Clemson, it's kind of obvious where the divide goes. Literally, they were 9-1. then their game with UNC gets postponed, and they've lost 4 of their last 5 since that COVID break. And the reason has been they haven't been forcing the amount of turnovers that they were originally. I mean, their turnover rate is 23% on defense, which is 23rd in the country. And so that does not bode well for UNC entering tomorrow if they don't clean that up. And I mean, Duke's going to take advantage of it too, because they like to play in transition. I mean, we've
Duke's
been saying
also
this the whole
sloppy with the
season,
ball,
right?
though. Duke's
True,
also
yeah.
sloppy with the ball. It'll be interesting to see in that game.
But look at what Clemson's done, the last 4 games? They've been awful.
Right. They've been terrible.
So,
Yeah. And I keep wanting to give Clemson a break because, I mean, if you look at their losses and just their losses, don't look at the score. They lost to Virginia Tech, who's a top 25 team.
Yeah,
Virginia, I mean, top 10 team. Georgia Tech, who's hit or miss. Florida State, at Florida State, and then at Duke.
I mean, I know what you're saying, because those are the top teams of the ACC. But like what you just said at the beginning, the ACC is not good. So even like they're getting killed. Like
those games they've got.
They're not close.
Whooped. Yeah, they're not. They haven't been.
All right, I'm going to interject here because we got a couple people have brought this up in the chat, and I want to please our fans, Greg, you were on the teleconference this morning with Roy Williams, correct?
Mm-hmm.
They're asking about Roy's thoughts and comments on the ACC tournament and what he said. If you want to maybe divulge into that a little bit, and we can kind of give our take on just the thoughts on the tournament in general, if you want to transition over to there.
Yeah, I don't know if I've missed reports or this is just a talking point by some people in the media because some coaches have just mentioned it. But there seems to be this I don't even know if you would call it a push, but there seems to be this conversation that, hey, maybe you shouldn't have the ACC tournament because it could be an issue.
I don't believe there have been any reports. I think it's just talk.
And so Roy's been asked about it on this teleconference a couple times. A bunch of the coaches have. And I mean, like Leonard Hamilton, Roy said, one thing that Leonard said earlier in the teleconference was, we're going to go through all these regular season games. And then when we get the opportunity to play for a tournament championship, we're going to say that's too much. That's a step too far. And so I think Roy is just a little bit frustrated. Like, look, either we're going to do it or we're not, but let's quit talking about it. Make a decision. And I think, what's his name? John Rothstein. I'm not sure who he's with, but
he's just independent.
Yeah. But he tweeted out, ACC has decided that they're going to keep on with the ACC tournament. I mean, they had never made a decision otherwise. Like, it was on. And people were talking now like, well, the tournament's on. Well, of course it was on. It was never off. And I think Roy's just kind of get frustrated with it. I think there has been some conversation, I know, on the boards of people talking about, well, maybe you do away with the first or second day of the ACC tournament and try to work an extra game in. Well, I mean, the whole point of the tournament is to give everybody an opportunity to earn an NCAA tournament berth. I mean, that's the fun of the tournament. And I think you're really hurting teams in the program. I mean, teams in the conference, if you take that approach. So, I'm glad Roy said it. I wholeheartedly agree with him. Like, if you don't want to have it and you have legitimate reasons not to play the tournament, then do it. But that is a money maker for the league. You're looking at the data last year, the 2019-2020 financial report UNC supplied to the NCAA. NCAA payout was like $2 million less than what it typically is. And so, I mean, they need to catch up. They need to make as much money as they can as a league, and the tournament's an opportunity to do that. And so you need to play.
To Roy's point, what's the difference between the ACC tournament and a regular season schedule?
Or the NCAA tournament, right?
Or the NCAA tournament. It's like you're still testing the players, and it's honestly probably have more control in the ACC tournament. Put in a hotel, create a bubble in the hotel, test daily. I think it's safe to do. And he's like, why can we do this but not do this? This is a moneymaker for our league, as you mentioned. This gives people a chance to get into the NCAA tournament. So why would we play a regular season schedule and then be like, oh, we can't play the ACC tournament. This is too dangerous.
I was talking to somebody at Notre Dame who works in the athletic department at Notre Dame. And he brought up a point about how just like concern of only one guaranteed game. and you're going to travel and do all that and have one guaranteed game and then have to go and that issue, which to y'all's point and to points before, how's that different than this traveling for a regular season game? So like, I mean, I understand the concern, but if you're going to travel for regular season games and only have one guaranteed game, then why? Like, I don't get what's different.
And everybody likes to talk about the NCAA tournament and how it's going to be 3 weeks in Indianapolis and all these plans. That's true for what, 4 teams? Are you going to be out there for 3 weeks?
Yeah, they're not all out there for a month.
34 teams are going to play one game and then check out. So it's the same thing.
It's bizarre. I mean, yeah, I don't understand what people are thinking. Let's talk about the elephant comment in the room. And Luke, I'll go to you first because it kind of blends over into the football season. I think a lot of Carolina fans have said when he talked about opting out, when he said, and don't quote me because I don't have it in front of me, but he said opting out is quitting.
Yeah, he said team or individual, which I thought was interesting. I go back and forth, and I think like a lot of UNC fans recently over the weekend struggled watching guys play in the Senior Bowl. I think that was a little confusing of like why not Texas A&M, but why the Reese Senior Bowl. I don't know, and I've thought about it. One, I think like, I know Mike personally. I don't know Chaz personally, but I'm gonna support Mike, 20 times out of 10. But I do think there is a difference with football and basketball with injury. Like if the idea was you opting out because you don't want to get hurt and playing the draft, I mean, playing a full contact game in football, I think is a little different from a 5-on-5 game basketball. I know the off chance that injury happens is apparent in both sports, but I do think it's a little kind of less in basketball. I was surprised to hear him say, I wasn't surprised to hear him say that and those be his thoughts. I was surprised that he was so kind of fervent on the take. Like it looked like it came from a place of passion. And I was surprised to see him be so bold in those words. Unlike Mac, who could honestly have the same beliefs as Roy. I'm not putting words in Mac's mouth, but kind of dances around the subject of like,
we're going to
do what's
support
best
them
for our players, going to support the players. I was surprised to hear Roy come out and say that so objectively and so kind of passionately. But
I mean, to Greg's point of the coaches being asked it a few times, it's just kind of like, I mean, I think it could have been less personal and more just like, look, I mean, I don't really have control of it, but like, and Roy kind of can get a little, I don't know.
Tessie?
Yeah. I don't know.
He
can get testy sometimes if he's tired of answering the same question. We kind of talked about that last week with his interaction or his scolding of Ross, right? But I don't know. But yeah, I mean, the direct quote, Tommy, do you know what opting out means? And then I don't know who asked the question, but the reporter answered it when Roy was going to answer it himself anyway. I kind of thought that was funny. But he was like, do you know what opting out means? It means you freaking quit, with like that same thing. I was like, you don't really see individual opt-outs in basketball. So I don't know. Do you think we could see that?
So there's 2 things here. The first is to Luke's point. And I was going to make this point on the message board, but Rob Harrington beat me to it. So props, Rob. But somebody brought up the fact that the Jim Christian, BC's head coach, came out today and said they're only going to have 4 scholarship players available for their game against Florida State, and they're going to play the game. And Rob's point was, it's a different story than football because, I mean, if you put a bunch of walk-ons out there, then and ask them to play 80 snaps in a football game.
You get somebody killed in football.
Right. You really could. In basketball, you put the scout team out there. I mean, they're going to get smoked and be embarrassed. But I can go out there and play basketball against Florida State.
Could you
jump over me and run around me and all this kind of things? But I'm not going to die. I could die on the football field. So that's part of it. I think injury is a key aspect of it. The other thing is that college basketball is set up where 68 teams get to play for the national championship. Only 4 teams get to do it in football. And so to equate like the Orange Bowl to the NCAA tournament, it's completely different because you always have hope that if you play your best game in the NCAA tournament, you can play another time and you can play another time. Only one team wins it, of course, but you have the chance. And if you don't make the college football playoff, you don't have that chance. You're just playing an exhibition game.
Sure.
And that's a big difference in the 2 sports.
I think the only comparisons like the NIT or any other tournaments, I don't know if there's been anything out there, but I definitely could see and expect teams that don't make the NCAA tournament to be like, all right, we're done. We're not playing the NIT or anything like that because of COVID.
That's a good point. I will say that in 2010, Roy Williams did not give, well, I think he did. I think he asked his coaches if they wanted to play in the NIT just to see what they would say.
And they said no.
Well, but he was going to play regardless.
Right. He's told that story a few times.
Yeah.
I would think, and I don't want to go down this rabbit hole, but the Michael Carter playing in the Senior Bowl, that's a job interview all week.
Sure.
And I think had those 2 guys,
he did well.
Yeah, and I think those 3 guys, 4 guys not have had the game they had against Miami in the regular season, I don't think they sit out the Orange Bowl. But that's just me. Props to them. And Michael Carter made some money this weekend. I'm not so sure Chaz did on the other end, but he did look good in practice. Anyway, I digress. Let's take a short break, talk about Johnny T-Shirt, JohnnyT-Shirt.com. Folks, if you're listening live or if you're listening online or however you're getting this podcast, you need to take a second to go to JohnnyT-Shirt.com and support them. They're a local business, alumni owned and operated, and they've got great swag for Carolina. And you can get anything you want, whether it's sweatshirts, hats, hoodies, sweatpants, any T-shirt you need. They also have tailgate and man tower and man cave gear. And if you're a member of this Inside Carolina Premium message boards, which you should be, if you're not, I'm not quite sure what's happening. You get 10% off everyday order, and they always having sales, and you can tack it onto those sales. Go to Johnny T-Shirt, support them. They need you. All local businesses need you. Johnny T-Shirt has supported us. They're friends of us. They're friends of you. Take care of them. Take another second, let the national guys pay the bills on the audio podcast, and we'll be right back with On the Beat. All right, boys, we are still here live on the Beat podcast. I'm Tommy Ashley. It's Greg Barnes, Luke Buxton, and Gregory Hall on the wheels of steel. Gregory, how's the board looking? We got any questions on there?
We've got someone asking. So the Cameron Crazies have been camping out in the elements. We can touch a little bit on the UNC Duke rivalry coming up, since we won't have a podcast. At least we won't be discussing it entering before Saturday, so we can touch on that a little bit.
Well,
Roy was asked that on the radio show about, and he doesn't like talking about games for it. So Jones asked the question. I don't know if it came from someone calling in or not, but Jones asked the question, and Roy had to preface. He's like, I'll say a little something about it, but I don't like to. He's like, we play Clemson tomorrow. I don't like to think past the next game.
That's gutsy of Jones.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah,
I respected it. I was like, okay, Jones, you okay?
Jones looking to get that head bitten off. Let me take a second to sort of segue into Greg. You wrote an article on InsideCarolina.com, posted it not too long ago about the home court advantage still matters during this COVID situation. It is fascinating to me when I look across the the ACC standings to look at the home court records. I mean, they're so far exceed the away for most teams. Pittsburgh maybe being the one outlier, but it's amazing. It's playing in a gym. It's just like playing in an empty gym for the most part. Even though I do notice Duke pumps in the Cameron Crazies probably more than anybody in the league. Greg, what's going on here?
I think Roy kind of nailed it when he said that it's just a comfort level for the teams. And you talk to a lot of players and you ask them about environments. And I mean, Duke and where Maryland plays for the longest time are about the only two, maybe NC State. Those are about the only ones where players will say, yeah, I actually kind of noticed the crowd. Like they got to me a little bit, just because players just zone out. That's what the coaches do. And there's so much noise that there's nothing sharp And so it all just kind of drowns out. And fans see the crowd, right? And it's all exciting and hyped and all that. And players feed off of that, but they feed off of that both ways. UNC always has the thing where you want to go and steal the brownies. You want to play your best on a opponent's floor to kind of make them feel bad and kind of you quiet the crowd. You thrive off of that. And so I think emotion is a good thing. I don't think it's as big of a deal as fans like to make it out to be. And I think there's a lot to that comfort level of knowing how the rims work and just knowing your surroundings. I think that's a much bigger part of home court advantage than the crowd dynamic.
Yeah,
it's always interesting. Let me interject old man talk here, Gregory. So I had the opportunity back when I covered games a lot from inside Carolina. JB Sissel and I, rest in peace, brother, covered the last game for Carolina State and Reynolds and the first game for Carolina State and PNC.
Nice.
And the last game in Reynolds, that was probably the most intense environment I've ever been in. And that includes Cameron multiple times, both as a sitting in the stands and on press row. Cameron is it gets so loud, it's not loud. It's just like you can't hear anything, so you zone out, like you say. And I remember Ed Cota used to always say, "Man, I don't hear it." You just don't. It's like a fog. But Reynolds Coliseum, that last game, Carolina and State, and that's when Ronald Curry and Ed Cota about caused a riot in there. That was angry and that was loud. And so to see those guys excel, those guys feed off it. And Gregory, what I'll ask you is, a lot of people talked about, even us on this podcast, talked about how the freshmen would benefit from no crowds. I'm not so sure that's been the case this year. What do you think?
I think, and that kind of leads into a question that Ryan Schmidt over here is asking is what's the Smith Center like with no fans, like during timeouts and even during gameplay? And I think the Smith Center is a little different because it's so large that the quiet is it's eerie, right? There's no buzz. And I mean, these kids aren't, I can't really speak to that much about AAU ball, about the dynamic, like what the crowds are like and things like that. But I mean, even when they play at high school, there's still fans there. And so people are saying that, oh, well, it's going to be quiet and they can just kind of get into their zone and can just focus on playing with their teammates. But it's weird. And so, yeah, I don't think it's benefited freshmen at all. And I don't think it's really benefited anybody. I mean, to Greg's credit about the home environment, I mean, it's thriving because you're comfortable home, because that's where you're practicing in the quiet. So you're used to it. And so then you get out onto the court during games and it's just like practice exactly. So I think that makes sense. But away, it's weird. And Greg, you've covered away basketball games. I have not. So I can only speak to what the Smith Center's like because it's so large. But like when there's timeouts, and I mean, they pump in music and things like that. They don't really pump in that much crowd noise unless I'm just missing it. But it's eerily quiet, and I don't like it at all.
Yeah, it's a strange thing because covering the CBS Sports Classic in Cleveland, we were actually pretty close to the benches. We were, I don't know, maybe 20 feet behind the benches, which is about the closest we've been all year. And I was right behind the Kentucky bench. And Kyle Tucker, I think Kyle's writing for maybe The Athletic now, but his entire post-game story was on John Calipari yelling at his players.
He was loud. We could hear it on TV.
Yeah, I mean,
He was lost his mind loud.
You can't hear Roy at all.
And he was interrupting my thought process, which is funny because people always ask me, how do you write a game story at Duke during the game when you got people elbowing you in the head? And just like the players, you just kind of zone out and you do what you have to do, and that's just kind of what you're used to. But when you have these sharp interruptions, like a Calipari yelling at his players, you're like writing, you're like, wait a minute, what did he say? And
so you don't want to miss it, right? You don't. Yeah. You might want to pick up on things, and that's just how our writers' brains.
And so it's almost a little bit disruptive, and the ability to hear coaches yell and to hear conversations and to hear sneakers squeak. I mean, we hear it in practice, but you don't ever hear that in games just because of the fans. So it is a different element. It's just a matter of not being accustomed to it.
Luke, chime in.
I've always had a hypothesis that crowd noise was really overrated. There's like some circumstances where I think it matters, but I've always like thought at home games, you're playing in front of your parents, your friends, your girlfriend. I think that also provides a level of intimidation when you're looking up and it's the classmates who are watching you play. At least when I was playing in high school, I've always felt like I was almost more nervous at home. And I would love going to other crowds to kind of like silence them. There was like no fear and no pressure that I didn't know anyone there. I had nothing to lose. But I think to Greg's point, I think it's about comfortability. They're shooting on the same basket that they shoot on every day in practice. They're looking at the same blue. They know where things are in the court. I just think of like when I'm playing driveway basketball in my house, I'm beating everyone who's coming to my place. I know how I know how the rim works. I know where to shoot. I know where to put on the backboard. I know where the crack is, where I can lean and you might turn your ankle on a crack. Like I got a home court advantage when I'm there. And I think it's the same thing for UNC and across the ACC. So I'm glad you wrote that article, Greg, because I've been curious to see how much it would impact. I also have a question kind of going off on this. Let's say UNC doesn't lose to Clemson at home last year. And I know that the Clemson game tomorrow is not at the Smith Center, but it has me thinking because I think the one got canceled. Are they making it up, the one in Chapel Hill?
They're trying to, but I don't see any way that's going to happen.
If they do, I had a thought. If UNC loses to Clemson this year, no fans for the first time ever at home. Yeah, let's say last year doesn't count and we can forget it. Does it count in the how would UNC fans interpret that? I was thinking about that the other day.
Any disclaimer, people could
they'll take it. They're like, no.
No fans. There are no fans.
They might as well have played at Luke's driveway because it's the same as the Smith Center this year.
Well, the ultimate question is: did Carolina miss the tournament last year?
No.
NCAA tournament?
No. There was no tournament.
I don't think so.
Yeah, you can't miss the tournament.
During the Duke game, they flashed like the streak of most made tournaments, and they had Michigan State, Kansas, and Duke up there that all ended in 2019. So even in their graphic, like it didn't say to present, like even that like consecutive tournaments made ended. So
everybody missed the tournament last year.
Everyone missed the tournament last
year.
They
didn't have a tournament. How can you miss a tournament that doesn't exist?
Exactly. They missed the tournament. All right, I want to pivot here because we got a question. UNC got 3 votes today in the AP poll. Should they have received more, and should they have been ranked based on their most recent performances?
Man, I don't know how I don't even look at those polls. I think they're ridiculous, but I'll defer to the expert, Greg Barnes.
Well, I would say because North Carolina did not look good earlier in the year, and we've talked about this before, they needed to win a lot of games early. They needed to stockpile victories early in the ACC season because their schedule was backloaded. And so they did what they needed to do, but now comes the hard part. And so I do think when you look at some of these wins, they beat Miami on a last-second shot by Playtech, and Miami didn't have his 4 best players. Like, it's a win, right? But they didn't look good against Wake Forest. Now, have they taken care of business? They're playing better? Yes, of course. Because Pittsburgh has struggled, that no longer is a Q1 win. So Carolina's back to being 0-4 currently.
Because it changes and things like that.
Yeah, right. So they're 0-4 now against Q1 teams. And I think they're 48th in the net rankings. So they've got some work to do still. So I kind of agree with Tommy. I think at this point, it doesn't matter. If you take care of business this week, and
correct.
Even if you lose at Clemson, if you beat Duke, I think that probably gets you back into the top 25. And I'm having a hard time putting a lot of stock in the rankings, is how this season's played out.
Kansas has lost, I don't even know how many games.
4 in a row, right?
And they're still ranked.
Yeah.
And they've played their worst basketball right now and played their best early on. And now it's like the opposite with UNC. And I think there's a lot of
I think 4 or 5.
Right.
4 or 5.
And I think last year a lot's been is being taken into consideration just because UNC showed signs of last year's play in a few games this year early on. And it was like, okay, well, maybe this team's still not good like they were last year. So I think that might have something to do with it.
But Tommy's point, that's why I don't look at those things either. It's midway through the season. The Heels could either go on a 8-game win streak and they could be a tournament team, or they could totally flub and lose the next 7 out of 8. And I mean, it's just so tough. Like you mentioned Kansas, Duke could make a run and somehow figure it out with their freshmen. It's so early to decide. I mean, Florida State's ranked 20 and UNC lost to them without Scotty Barnes. Like, I think it's hard to make an argument that they could be in now. You beat Clemson and Duke, or as Greg mentioned, just Duke. Then you got a conversation. You got a little bit of talking points of why you should be in. But right now, I don't think there's any reason they should be or they should care.
You know what's going to be something to watch for me is assuming we have a tournament. You know, this talk about not having the ACC tournament is crazy to me. But assuming they have an NCAA tournament, is how do they fill the bracket? Because you've got all these teams that are not as good as normal, quote unquote. Are you going to fill the bracket with a bunch of teams nobody's ever heard of? And I'm not saying that literally, but for the most part, you got teams. So, you know, I can't see a situation that Carolina and Duke, if they're above 500, 500 in the league or above 500 overall, don't make the tournament. I mean, that's
Sure.
yeah, it's an asterisk season for sure. So let's talk about this Clemson game right fast, and then we'll talk about the Duke game since I won't get to talk to you guys before that game is played. Greg, Clemson we've talked about just briefly before has been awful lately, and they were awful this weekend. Do they get it right against Carolina, or do you think Carolina's trend continues upward?
Well, Clemson's only loss at home was to Virginia. And granted, that was a disaster of a
It was
game.
by 35, for those of you who don't know.
Virginia scored 85. I mean, how often does Virginia score 85 on anybody?
A lot this year. Their offense is pretty solid.
Yeah. But
Don't contradict Greg Barnes on this.
what do we
I forgot
know
he was
about-
all knowing.
Certainly not. What do we know about Clemson under Brad Brunell? Right. We know they're going to be very good defensively, and whether or not they have success is going to depend on if they make shots. I mean, they're 249th in effective field goal percentage. So they're shooting better at home, and therefore they've got some pretty good wins at home. I mean, they beat Florida State at home, they beat State, and they beat Louisville. And Louisville was last week. I mean, that's a good win. I know Louisville's a little bit up and down right now.
They're smacking whoever they're playing right now, though. Georgia Tech, I think.
They wore them out. It's over.
Yeah, they played that like mid-afternoon, didn't they? Because Louisville's got 3 games this week, which is crazy. But so for North Carolina, it's going to be they don't have to shoot a extremely high percentage, but they have to be efficient, and they can't turn the ball over. Clemson's forcing turnovers about 1 every 4 possessions, and as Gregory said, some of these games where they've gotten blown out, they haven't been able to do that. And so if Carolina can take care of the ball and they continue to work from the inside out, you have to like their chances. Now, if Clemson's hitting and they're active defensively, that's going to be a problem. But Clemson's a good team. They just have had a tough stretch of late for whatever reason.
Gregory, you obviously don't think Clemson's very good. I think Amir Sims is very good, and
Yes.
They have struggled a lot. I think the way Carolina wins this game is just pound it to Brooks and Baycott and Sharp all day. What you think?
Yeah, Clemson's defense, they force you to shoot threes. That's kind of what they've done, and teams shoot relatively well from 3 against them compared. I mean, not great compared to what good 3-point shooting is, but teams shoot 35.2% from 3 against them, which is 241st in the country. But teams are shooting almost 42% of their shots are threes. So it's high volume, high percentage. There's not a lot of 2s, but then if you can get the ball inside, they're going to prevent you from scoring inside. So I don't know. It's tricky. I think you still have to pound the ball inside because they want you to shoot 3s, right? That's kind of what their game plan has been, is force 3s. We'll let you shoot decent against us. We're not going to let you shoot 2s. And when you do, we're going to defend them very well. So I think to your point, if you can get it inside and you can exploit that inside, then Clemson's kind of like, well, they might get back on their heels and be like, well, we don't know what to do anymore because this is not how we play defense. So I think to your point, I think that's what UNC needs to do. And I think since Clemson has been playing poorly, Jones brought this up to Roy about how not a great time to face Clemson because they're playing poor and they want to turn that around. And you never really want to play a team that feels like they have nothing to lose kind of thing. But outside of Amir Sims, I don't really see someone that can beat Carolina in a way that Isaiah Musius did. Now, I'm the king of the jinx on Twitter, so I'm gonna have people coming at me now. Someone's gonna have a career night. But look,
who's it gonna be?
Right. Amir Sims is their leading scorer. He's their only scorer in double figures. He's shooting 54% from the floor, 61% true shooting percentage. He's good. He's really good. He's their leading rebounder because he's their main big man at 6'9". And even though at 6'9", sometimes he plays the 5, even though he's shooting threes. I don't know. They have kind of a weird lineup. And he's their leading passer. He has the most assists. He has like 38 assists, and second is their point guard, their backup point guard with 34. So if you can, almost like Pitt, if you can basically prevent everyone else from doing well, then you're going to win the game, right? Because Justin Champagnie had a great game against UNC, right? He had 21 and 12, I think, were his numbers. But everyone else didn't have a good game. So I think the game plan, rather than prevent Amir Sims, because he's not going to score 70 points against you. If you can prevent Amir Sims, then I think you're solid. I think that needs to be their UNC's defensive focus, and then go from there. What do you think, Greg and Luke?
Go ahead, Luke.
I think that the bigs are going to have a big role in this game. Personally, I think Armando and Dayron specifically are going to have a really good game. Outside of Amir Sims, I don't think their forwards are all that great. And then I think Curran Walton, as you mentioned, with them letting shoot threes, I think he's going to have like a crazy 18, 20-point game.
He could attempt like 10 to 12 threes again, like he did against, was that Florida State, Greg, that he shot that many threes?
Yeah, sounds right.
I think they match up pretty well, so I'm curious to hear what Greg says.
I don't think Walton needs to shoot that many against Clemson. He had to shoot that many against Florida State because they. But
I think Clemson's going to make him shoot that many, though. Is what I'm saying.
Well, if they're there, he needs to take them. I think he's proven to be a good enough shooter, and Roy said as much. I mean, they have to tell him to shoot the ball more, and he really is their only true, 3-point threat. I mean, I know Caleb can get a little bit hot, but he's still not shooting very good percentage. And we were talking about what Leakey was 4-4 at Miami. Has he made one since? I mean, seriously, I'm not sure that he. I'd have to look.
Was 4-4 against Miami. He is.
He has 3 of 7 on the
22.
Season.
So he's 3 of 22 other than the Miami game.
Okay.
Ouch.
So a good Miami game, and they needed it. I mean, but I was going to comment on Gregory's note there. I mean, Roy has said for years and years and years that he's got enough good players on his team that he doesn't rely on any one person to be the guy offensively. And if a team wants to take away a Tyler Hansbrough, then you've got Ty Lawson and Wayne Ellington to pick up the laps there. And the same goes defensively. Like, he's not going to commit a lot of people to shutting down one guy. I mean, they're going to do some unique things and try to help each other out a little bit.
I mean, they weren't even supposed to double Luke Garza.
Right.
When after, I think it was after the game or something. Roy's like, the game plan was not to double team him, and they were doing it.
They were doing it anyway, right? But that's the kind of the mindset of like, if they've got a good guy and he's going to get his 20 points, so be it. But we're going to play good enough defense where somebody's not going to be left wide open time and time again. Now, whole different discussion about whether or not that happens. But that's one of the reasons you see random people have big games, is because they're not determined to take away any one person. They just want to try to play good team defense. And sometimes people are able to capitalize on that.
Yep. Let's wrap this show. We're getting out of here. This has been On the Beat Live. I'm your host, Tommy Ashley, Greg Barnes, Gregory Hall, Luke Buxton. Let's talk about Duke for just 1 second. I don't like to look ahead. Luke Buxton, Carolina and Duke at Duke. No Cameron crazies, but like I said, I'm pretty sure I heard plenty of piped in crowd noise, but it will not be the same over there. How you see that one working out?
I will say, me and Greg were right on Pittsburgh. We both, I think I had them by 6 and by
Okay.
5.
Easy.
Two guys are left to me. Can't say that for them.
Prove
But
it.
that's here nor there.
Roll the
It's
tape.
I think it's tough. I mean, the classic saying is right. You throw all the stats, all the numbers out the window for these type of games.
Look at last year.
Yeah, exactly. I think UNC matches up pretty well versus Duke. I have a hard time. I think I could see Duke winning that one. I think UNC beats Clemson, but loses to Duke. Maybe that's a hot take, but
I mean, who guards Jalen Johnson?
It's got to be Leaky and engage Leaky.
Who guards Leaky? Who guards Jalen Johnson? My question remains the same. I don't think you.
But again, that's the same thing with like Luka Garza and then Champagne. Like Champagne dropped 23. I think you got to let him get his, as we just talked about. I think it's a toss-up. I could see Duke easily winning, but I wouldn't be surprised at all if UNC won by 1 or 2. It just really depends on who takes care of the basketball.
Miami just beat Duke, by the way, by 2.
I was going to say Duke's playing better, and then I'm glad Luke went first because Miami. I mean, the ACC,
Miami was at 2-6 in the ACC, and they just beat Duke at home. So the home court advantage.
No, Miami was 2.
Andrew Playtech needed to hit a game winner.
They played 11 ACC.
Right.
Those Duke Rams are so soft.
Oh, you've played there. Yeah, you've played there.
I've shot ball in there. You're right. It's like shooting in old Cary High School gym.
It's like Deflategate.
Come on, man. We're not talking about Tom Brady's a Buccaneer. Greg, Carolina and Duke, Saturday. I mean, look, and I don't know if you two guys have covered, and I don't know how many people have had the opportunity to see a game in there. I love seeing games in Cameron. I mean, it is awesome to me. Even sitting on press row with all the knuckleheads all over the top of you, it's a great environment. It's a great environment from the crowd, but it's going to be different, Greg. And so how does it work out?
Yeah, well, kind of the storyline that we've talked about for years in this matchup is Roy's going to do everything he can to pound the ball inside, take advantage of Duke's smaller lineups, and Duke's going to try to take advantage of some open shots on the perimeter. And I think we'll see the same. I think this will be a fun one because neither of these teams are elite teams. And so it's really going to come down, and you've got guards that are freshmen pretty much playing the bulk of the minutes for both teams. And Matthew Hurt's playing pretty good, but with the way that Armando Bacot's playing and the way that Daron Sharp is just a physical presence down low, you've got to like UNC's advantage down there. Duke, I mean, they may have a little bit more talent. I don't know. We probably have that discussion. But I think it's going to be a great game. And I think with Duke losing, what Carolina does against Clemson is going to be critically important. But Duke will be ready, and I think Carolina will be ready. And for these teams to finish the way they want to, I think they need this game on Saturday. So it's not the normal top 10 matchup that we're accustomed to, but this is one that's very important for how they finish in the standings and what kind of seeding they get in the NCAA tournament. So I think it'll be a fun one.
When was the last time that UNC and Duke were both unranked and played each other?
61. Yeah, I mean
1960.
1960.
Yeah, I was not born. That is insane, and
That's
I think
nuts.
You weren't born. I would never have guessed that.
Boy, you lucky I can't come through the screen.
I can with all this white stuff over here.
That's called children, my man. One day you shall know. Yeah, let's get out of here. John Siegley, our esteemed producer, is wondering when we are going to finish so he can get this posted for our Inside Carolina listeners that haven't been on the live stream. It's been the On the Beat podcast, sponsored by Johnny T-Shirt, JohnnyT-Shirt.com, Greg Barnes, Gregory Hall, Luke Buxton. I'm Tommy Ashley. Boys, it's been fun.
I'm glad I got the live stream to work. If you've been here the whole time, we've been around 20 to 25 to 30 people. So thanks for coming out.
Absolutely.
Nice small little contingent. We'll build it. Thanks, boys.